Hello, welcome to this next Substance Painter tutorial here. So we're going to continue the little series I've started. So I've made a dress and I've tested it out in rigging and done some adjustments. And now we're going to start the texturing process. So I'll reference the previous videos somewhere, and so let's get going. So it is File and New, and select my dress. I'm using the UDIM workflow because I've got two UDIM tiles. I'm going to leave it at 2048 to start with because that will help me with my performance, and then I'll update that later. Okay, so here's the dress, and one of the things we'll need to do on this one is bring in the normal maps we baked. So, whoops, that's the wrong button, that's the right button. So I've got my normals here, and I'm just going to right click and just drag and drop those into the interface, and then minimize that window, and I've got the import dialog here. So if I left click and just select over those, I can change them both to texture, and I'm going to use current session because I'm not going to use it outside of this model, and then import, and that should import them in. Lovely. Okay, so I've got two textures, and if I switch to the 2D 3D view, I know that that's my back one, and that's my side one. Okay, so let's create a quick fill layer, and I'm going to alt and click on normal, so it's only the normal channel, and then I'll drag and drop my normal map stack there onto that one. Now, because it's UDIMs, you know, depending upon which texture I put this on, it will have the same effect. So I don't need the specific map, just the correct stack of maps. Okay, so now somewhere in here we should see some sort of effect, and that's there. And if I right click and instance this, I'm going to instance it to the other texture, click OK, and now we'll get the full effect because we've set it up on both our material layers. Just get rid of that paint layer there. Now there is one other thing to do, because I happen to know that the Marvelous Designer map is OpenGL, whereas the default in Substance Painter is DirectX, but we can change it. So if I go to my original layer, not the instanced one, I can come here, and under next to material we've got this little drop down, and then we have color spaces, and if I drop down color spaces, it's going to give me a normal format. So it's on auto. I could put it on raw, OpenGL or Direct3D. If I switch that to OpenGL, it will correctly display the normal map. There we go. So now I've got a, whoops, I didn't mean to do that, let's press F. So now I've got a nice crisp normal line all around the seams of my dress, which is, you know, what I was looking for. Okay, so that's our initial setup. In the next one, what we're going to do is start to build some shape using the height channels. Okay, so I'll talk to you then. Okay, so what I want to do is sort of describe two different materials, and I'm going to do that by putting some folds in one and not the other. So because my sort of material on the front of the dress I envision as being quite thick and, you know, stiff, I'm going to put some kind of pull folds, stress folds at the seams. So to do that, in the correct material, which is this silk one I've got here, I'm going to add a layer. So I'm going to add a fill, and I'm going to drag it below. Notice I've renamed this to normal just so that, you know, I know what it's called. So for this fill layer I only want the height, so I'm just going to alt and click on height, so I've only got the height channel. And then below that I'm going to right click and add a paint, and this is where I'm going to paint in some folds down the side. So what do we want? Well, we want it on the height, so I'll take colour off, and now we're going to use something I haven't used very often, which is the projection painting. So if I turn on projection painting here, we can add in some options. I've not clicked the projection painting button, I'm sorry, I've clicked the fill. There's the projection painting, there we go. So I only want that on height. Let's take the colour off, and what we can do here is pick a texture which is going to help us. So if I just take that filter off there, in the textures there are some soft creases somewhere, if I can find them. There they are. So you see these creases soft. I'm going to drag and drop that into my height channel, and now, as you can see, let me switch back to just the 3D view. I've got this little square down here. Now it's not much good down there, so let me press S, it's the S key, and then down here you can see we've got S plus middle will pan, and if I press again we've got S plus left, which will rotate it around, and we've got S plus right, which will zoom it in and out. There we go. And there is another one, Shift S and stencil, yes, Shift S and left will snap it, so you can get back to horizontal. Okay, so with that done, what we can do is just position this. So I'll press Shift and pan, which is middle mouse, Shift and left to say rotate it, and I'm rotating it according to the position I want to put it on this line, and then S and right to move it down. And I'm just going to get out to a distance where I can see just about everything I want, because I don't really want to move this while I'm doing it. So S and middle mouse to pan that in, and then I'm going to turn on my symmetry, so I get my red line down the middle, and then we'll start painting in. Now don't worry that it looks a bit weird, that it looks a bit, you know, stiff and such like. We're going to soften that up in a minute. So now it's a case of moving and, whoops, not scaling, rotating and painting. So it's move, rotate and paint, and move, rotate and paint, and we keep going until we've got everything we want. There we go, it's down the bottom. This tool take a minute, sorry, it's a bit boring. So it's move, let's rotate that, there we go, and then let's finish off up the end. There we go. I'm just going to rotate round. Yep, that's okay. So that looks like a bit of a mess, which is fine, you know, life is like that. So I'm just going to come out of projection paint, and that was just to clear the screen so I could see better really. In the layer I'm going to right click and add a filter and pop a blur on, and now I can blur this to my heart's content to make it a more subtle effect, and now that looks pretty good. There we go. So that's sort of painting in some kind of stress, you know, seam pulling, if you like, on a thick material, and that's going to, you know, give me a nice kind of base to work with. But I don't want it to be a height map, I want it to be a normal map. So in the next section we're just going to convert this into a normal. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so now I want to convert this into a normal map, and for that I will select the layer and then right click and add filter, and in the filter we'll have height to normal, and you'll see immediately that that kind of goes crazy. That's because it's doubling up the height and the normal. So it's displaying the height and the normal in the same place, so it looks, you know, exaggerated. To fix that, we switch over to the height channel in the layer stack, and then on the layer, we just slide our opacity down to 0, and that should do the job. Now, you might not have seen much of a change there, and that's because we have some options to make on the height to normal. So if I go to the normal channel, you'll see that it's a very strong map at the moment, and we can adjust that using the surface size and the surface scale. So if I increase the size up, you'll see it kind of fades out a little bit, and then if I take the depth down, it softens it up and makes it a little bit more sensible. So if we go back to material, now we can see what effect it's having. So I can take the depth down or take it really up to get the kind of level I want. And I don't want it to be too exaggerated, I just want it to be, you know, visible. So it's somewhere around there, I think. Now, so that's a relatively, you know, simple sort of height stack, but we can make it more complicated if we want. You know, we can add to it, we can do all sorts of things. So for example, we could add a new fill layer to this. So if I add a new fill, and then I'm going to drop that down below the height to normal, not below the blur, because I don't necessarily want this to blur, and alt click height, and now I want something that's going to give just some pause. So spots, is it, or is it dots? I can't remember. Spots, there we go. So we've got a grunge spot dirty, there we go, we'll have that one, and I'll pop that in there, and you'll see the effect it has. It's overwriting. So what we want to do is change the layer type, so perhaps do a multiply, not multiply, that's not right, add. So I can see that there is some normal there, but this is kind of overriding it a bit. So if I take that down a bit, we'll get a, you know, a better effect, or a better blend, should I say. Okay, so the spots aren't exactly what I want, so let's have a look down here, see if we've got any options. Not many on this one actually, surprisingly enough. We can change the seed, which will give us a different sort of set of patterns, and we can invert it, which is actually what I want, because I want these little indents to be going inwards, and they're too big at the moment. So if I update the tiling, we can get a finer pattern. I was rather hoping there would be something down here which would allow me to, you know, adjust the pattern a little bit. So perhaps this isn't the right one. Let's try this grunge spots. Okay, that might be more like it. What do I want? I want to invert it to get it going inwards, and we have a balance now. So if I adjust the balance, I can really affect how, you know, that's working. Similarly on the contrast, I can make them much sharper or softer, and it's just about adjusting it to, you know, how you want. And I'm just giving it some surface texture, and you know, this is still too big, so let me really get that down to get to more of a pore level rather than a you know, a massive surface detail level. And because I've put this below my height to normal, this is just all getting incorporated into the normal map. So if we zoom in, you should be able to see that. There we go. Right, so you can build your map as you want. You could pop in some extra folds if you want. I'm keeping this pretty tight, so I'm not really going to worry about that too much. Between videos I'll just do the a similar job on the back. I'll add to the paint layer on the back to put in those pulls, and I may put it on the shoulders as well. So what will we do when we come back? We'll start to colour it, I think. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so before I do my colour layer, I've forgotten that I haven't baked my textures, and there was something quite important I wanted to show you on that. So let's bake our textures. So texture set settings, and then click on this little thing here, little box to take us down to the baked mesh maps, and I'm going to go to 2048, and under my ambient occlusion you'll notice I'm at 256 and 0.005 for occlusion distance, and curvature is the same. They're not default values, they're my default values. So just set those, and then apply to all, so it applies to all your texture sets, and then bake the selected textures. So what's going to happen is this is going to give me a really rubbish curvature map, and we're going to fix that. So if I click OK there and go over to the curvature map, oops, not far enough, there we go, you'll see it's very faceted, and I don't want that to be the case. I want it to be smoother, because I'll get a better result essentially. So under the bake settings, I'm now going to deselect everything and just select curvature, and in the curvature settings what I want is for to be able to increase my samples beyond this, and for that I'm going to untick relative bounding box, and 0.02 seems to be a nice setting. So apply to all, and then I'm going to rebake, and we should see a lovely smoother result. See, a lot of that faceting has all gone away, and my map is quite smooth. If you don't want it that smooth, or you want it smoother, then adjust your settings, and eventually you'll get to something you're happy with. But for the moment I'm happy with this. Okay, so that's me done the baking, and now we can go on to do some colour. And the reason we needed to bake was because we're going to use some generators, and those generators rely on those maps to give the result. So under layers, I'm going to add a new fill, and I'm just going to pick this plastic matte pure. There's no height or normal information in them, so it's going to preserve my my work. So let's change this colour. So I want a darkish sort of blue black, somewhere around there, maybe a little darker. There we go. And for the roughness, I'm going to take that down a little bit to make it a bit shinier. Not too much, just a bit. So that's pretty boring. So what we're going to do is duplicate this layer. Let's just label that to start with. I'll label it colour so I know what I'm doing, and then we'll right click and duplicate the layer. And now I want to increase the roughness, and I'm going to darken that a little. I want there to be a difference between these two materials. I want one to be sort of darker and matter, one to be a bit brighter and shinier, and the mix between the two will give us a nice effect. Okay, so right click, and then we'll add a black mask. There we go. And then right click on the mask, and we'll add a generator, and I'm going to use the dirt generator. And once that's done, we should have some differences. Now it may be hard to see, So if we go over to our mask channel, we'll see where it's happening, and we can perhaps adjust this to fit a bit better. So I can see that I've got a little bit of a seam down the middle where my UV islands are. So I could click on use triplanar, and that gets rid of that seam. It changes it a little bit, but not too much. The reason it's changing is because of the projection type, and that's with the grunge essentially. So for that, I'm going to actually reduce the grunge size, so I get kind of bigger details. If I increase it, I'll get smaller details, but the more I increase it, the more it will tile and the more obvious it will be. So I like to keep the tiling quite low on the grunge. We could adjust the amount, perhaps something like that, so have it less obvious. And then let's go back to our material view and have a look. Now, it may be that what I don't have is a good sort of transition here. So if I come into this colour, and perhaps if I lighten it up a bit, we'll be able to see exactly where it's happening. So I've got that around the top, between the breasts, and various other places, and I can sort of lower that down. And it's not that I want to see it really obviously, I don't, I want it very subtle, but it's quite difficult sometimes to see. So I'm just going to adjust that down a bit. Now the next trick is I want to incorporate all of my painting detail here into this generator, and we can do that with an anchor point. So on our fill layer here, which I'm just going to do as let's call it Wrinkles for the moment, I'm going to right click on this and add an anchor point. So this anchor point, anything underneath it is going to reference. So what I can do up here in the dirt generator is come down here, and under the micro normal, if I go to anchor points and click Wrinkles, it will reference that channel. It's going to ask me which channel I want, and I want the normal channel, of course. And then up here under micro details, I can enable the micro normal. Now it will help me to go back to the mask now to demonstrate. You can see that I've got just some little things coming in here, and I've got all my little spots. We can adjust how this works. So we've got an AO radius, so you see as I increase that, I'm getting much stronger effects. And I also have an AO depth. Again, if I increase it, I'll get more and more and more and more. And I think I want some sort of balance between those to get that right. And this is why I wanted the this layer to be darker than this layer, because all of these little spots are indents, and I want all those to be darker than the outside. So let me go back to here, and then I'll go onto my colour again and just take that down to it's really quite dark. And if I turn this off and on, we should see the effect. You'll see that I've got my roughness the wrong way around, I think. So this is the shinier, and this I want to be rougher. So I'm going to turn that roughness up so that I get a more a much rougher material going on. Okay, so that's basic sort of colour on that, nothing very exciting. You can of course build and build and build. Oops, I turned that off. There we go. See, I thought it was going mad, that didn't change. There we go. So now my pores are darker, and these wrinkle kind of features are darker too, and I see that they're a bit too dark. So let me just raise those up until it's quite a nice transition. Yeah, there we go. I could always adjust the color intensity or the color layer intensity here, the layer blend. So if I turn that right down, I should get nothing, but for some reason I'm getting something. Looks like I'm having a bad moment. No, it's definitely doing something, just not as much as I expected, I think. There we go. Oh, it's not as much as I expected, just because it's not just the colour channel. So we could go to the roughness channel here, for example, and adjust our roughness, you know, to get a subtler blend. There we go. Okay, so that's that bit really. Again, you know, we could do some more detailing in this and all sorts of things, but for the sake of this tutorial and the techniques I want to show, I think that's enough. Okay, so in the next bit we'll start to work on our side and trim. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so for the other material, I want to distinguish between the side panels and the trim. So I'm going to add 2 folders. Once things wake up, there we go. Call this one trim, and oops, call this one panel, just so I can keep track. You know, I'm not very good at that. So let's add a black mask to that one and a black mask to that one. I'm going to go into my 2D 3D mode, and we'll go to the polygon fill, select chunk mode, and on the panel I want these ones. So let me switch this over to material, or to mask rather, and yep, there we go, they turned white. That's good. I don't know why they both turn white. Oh, it's because I've got symmetry on that. Let me turn symmetry off. Okay, so for the trim, and I just want the trim pieces. There we go. Okay, so whatever I put in here will go onto the panels, and whatever I put on the other one will go into the trims. So the trim I'm going to leave really simple. I'm just going to use like the plastic here, and then where am I? Is that in there? Yes. We can change that colour on a darker version. I want it a little bit darker than the rest of it, essentially. Okay, so somehow I've managed to remove my instanced normal map that I bought in, and now I can't see it, of course, because I'm not very bright. It's not that one, it's not that one. I know it's here because I can. No, actually, perhaps it's not. I've probably managed to delete it while I was cleaning things up. Let me add a layer back in, and just normal. And then if I go up here to all libraries and go to project, under textures, I should have them. Oh, I do not. What have I done then? Oh well, never mind. I'll just import them back in. There we go. Texture, current session, import. I don't think I've, yeah. Having a moment, it appears. So let me pop that back in there, and then switch the color space over to OpenGL. There we go. And then right click, let's call this normal again. Oops. Right click and instance across others, and this is on that one, so that's that one. There we go. So now I've got my nice crisp line in there. Perfect. Okay, so that's about that really. I might do a little bit on it later, but nothing too exciting. I might put a couple of claspers or buttons or studs up around the collar. So let's go and have a look at our where are we? There we are, our panel. Okay, so I could do whatever I want with the panel really. It's down to your design choice, whatever you fancy. But I'm going to go and have a look in here and see what I've got down a little bit further. Metal would be quite cool, but yeah, not so much. I want something with a little bit of kind of clothiness to it. Perhaps this scarf wool, if I make it small enough, will do the job. So let's pop that into there, and it will come in, and it's really big. So we come down to our technical parameters. I've got nothing in there to use, so we'll use our tiling. So if I go quite high on that, there we go. That's not too bad, but it's the wrong colour, of course. So what colour do I want? That's a good question. Do I want something blue, dark, or do I want a contrasting colour? What goes with blue? Yellow. Yeah, it's a bit bright. I think I'll go with the blue, somewhere around there. Oh, that's a bit more purple, isn't it? Let's take that down and then just darken that up a bit. There we go. So I have a kind of a two material dress with some wrinkle details. That's quite nice. I'm not entirely sure about this. Let me come up to my search and do fabric. With some leathers, and what else have I got? Got a stockinette stitch. No, that's not what I want. Bamboo, interesting. Got denim, knitted sweater, rough. Yes, let's try that one instead. I might be able to bring this back down again. So that's what it is at kind of full size. Let's try 4. That's nice. Yeah, then it's just a colour choice really. I'm really not happy with it being blue, but I'm not sure. Oh no, red. Yeah, let's go red. Getting Star Trek vibes now. Somewhere around there, I think. Okay. On top of that, I'm going to copy, so let's duplicate that one, and once again I'm going to change the colour a little bit. Let's make that a bit darker. I don't think I've got any like roughness parameters I can use here, but that's okay. And then add a black mask, add a generator. We'll use our dirt generator again, and that should have blended those together. If I turn it off and on, you'll see the difference. You'll forgive the squeaking and banging in the background. That's my front door. It's a bit tight. It's been raining. So yeah, so I can exaggerate that a little bit by making this a little darker. Or not. Perhaps it's not doing anything. Oh, it's because I've managed to tick it off. There we go. There we go. We can see the kind of dirt pattern that's coming in. I'm just going to back it off until it's there, but not super visible. Okay. Right. What else are we going to do? Well, I want to perhaps put some details on this. I want to put a couple of studs on the collar so it's kind of joined together, give it a bit of something, and then we'll have a think about it. So I will talk to you in the next one. Okay, so I'm just going to put a couple of buttons on here, nothing very extensive. So within the trim folder, I'm going to add a paint layer, and I've got the aluminium pure selected. I'm just going to add a height to this and then just increase that a little, somewhere around there I think. And then I just want to zoom in. I want to get 2 buttons in here, so I'm just going to make that a bit smaller. Now I've selected the basic soft brush because I want it to be a little kind of rounded, not much. So if I click in there, you see that's, you know, a little bit over the top. But if I come up to this hardness property, just increase that, I'm going to get a much kind of softer fall off. And if I take that right up, it might as well just be the basic hard brush. So let's take that down a little bit. Take our size down. I've got control held down, and I'm just using clicking my right mouse button and moving. And now I can just stamp in a couple of pieces there. There we go. So that gives us a little button. I want to convert our height to normal. So it's right click, add filter, height to normal, and it will go a little bit crazy. I'm going to take the height channel, and on the main layer I'll set the blend to 0. You see that's reducing the effect because it's doubling up between the height and the normal. And then on the normal we'll reduce the centimeters here, or the depth, and we could even increase the size, the surface size, until it's as we want it. And if I look at the normal channel, yeah, I think that's pretty good, not bad. Okay, so you could do that on either, any layer, any layer you want. I just want to do a quick experiment on this layer actually. Because we have another filter which might actually help us a little bit. So if I right click and add new filter, we have somewhere down here drop shadow. There it is, drop shadow. So if I add drop shadow in, we've got a distance, a size, and a spread. I'm going to increase the spread and increase the size, maybe even the distance, until I get something, and I'm not really getting very much, which is a shame. I was rather hoping just to get like a pattern around it that would just ease it into the material. Never mind, bit of a failed experiment that one. I hadn't practiced that. It just occurred to me. Okay, so above all of that, I'm going to add another new layer, a fill layer. Where's the fill? It's down here. There we go. And to that fill, oh, that's the wrong one again. Sorry, I should have done it from up here. Add fill, right click and add black mask. And within that, I'm going to add a generator and use my dirt generator again, and we should get quite a bit of dirt coming in for that. Yes, quite a bit. So we can adjust our generator here, so I can take the grunge scale down. I prefer to, personally. I could take the grunge amount down a little bit, and maybe on the main layer we'll just use roughness and just increase the roughness in those areas to have a little bit of variation going on. Once again, I could add an anchor point in here, and then on our generator we can come down to micro normal, select anchor point and layer 1, switch this over to normal again, and then in the micro detail section turn on the micro normal. You'll see now I've got the kind of effect I was looking for on the drop shadow. A little kind of hazy bit around our buttons to tie them in, make them look like they're not just stuck on, because yeah, I prefer it that way. So we can increase the radius of this or even the depth to get a little bit more of an effect. There we go, something like that I think, and then I think we're about done. So I mean, you can obviously, you know, I've taken it to a certain level, you can take it even further if you want to. You can do all sorts of things within those layers to, you know, build and build and build. You know, you could even use that technique I used there to pop a logo on the chest, since this is giving me Star Trek vibes for some reason. Yeah, so I hope you found that generally useful. I hope you picked up something within it. I'm sure you knew, you know, some of it already, but hopefully there's something in there that's, you know, new to you and you know, will help you. So one last thing, I'm going to go to my little render room here and have a look, see what it looks like. So in the settings, I like to change to the Gdansk shipyard, which sounds a bit strange, but it's a really natural light, I find. And then I'm going to slide this down and just pop clear colour on and turn ground off. There we go. Now I can use shift and right mouse to move my light around until, you know, it looks as I want it to. Okay, again, hope you found it useful, and I will talk to you soon.